I'm Ronald and I'm a relationship and family therapist. Having worked with couples throughout the years, there are a few red flags in relationships that, as a therapist, worry me a bit more than others. These red flags are typically more complex and challenging for couples, and if not addressed properly, can lead to a poor prognosis. 7 signs our relationship won't last. Indifference. This is where partners no longer care about one another. They no longer see each other as important. When a depressive sigh is met with silence. Most people equate having arguments as an indicator of a relationship gone wrong. But arguments on some level can show that you still care. Not having arguments can be a problem in itself. Neglect. This is where partners no longer even try to connect or engage with each other. They take each other for granted. They become complacent. This is when you bring your best part of yourself to work or out with friends, and you bring the leftovers home. When you take more care of your car than you do your relationship. Neglect comes about when couples fail to recognize that relationships aren't static. They are dynamic. Just because you're in a relationship, you've shared your vows, doesn't mean nothing else needs to happen. A relationship can thrive, grow, and flourish just as easily as it can deteriorate, decline, and die. What happens when you buy a dream house and do nothing to maintain it? The same happens in relationship. Violence. Violence destroys all relationships. Intimate partner violence is bad, but microaggression is more than enough. You don't feel physically beat up, but emotionally. Criticism, contempt, defensiveness. There's only so much relational violence one can take before throwing in the towel. Contempt is especially potent. This is where remarks are made, where the underlying message is, I am better, smarter, and kinder than you are. There is a sense of superiority and inferiority, a power imbalance that relationships struggle to survive. Trauma. Trauma can come in 2 forms: individual personal trauma, or trauma that comes about from the relationship. Personal trauma. This is where one's individual personal trauma plays out in the relationship. The trauma of one's past comes alive in the couple relationship. For the other partner, it can feel like being part of a play that they never auditioned for. There can be confusion or frustration as to where these relationship problems have come from. And then there's relational trauma. This is trauma that comes as a consequence of the couple's interaction. Relational trauma is an event that challenges the very foundation of the relationship. There is a deep betrayal of trust, or there is abandonment at a crucial time of need, and the other partner is inaccessible or unresponsive. And as a result, the relationship is redefined as no longer being secure. A typical example is an affair, but it's not always an affair. Unresolved conflicts. Conflict is not a problem in itself, but it can become a problem when it remains unresolved. Couples sweep their problems under the rug, and it saves them from having to deal with pain. But what happens with these problems is that it becomes a rock in their shoe. It's out of sight, but it's still somewhere there, and it will inevitably manifest itself in the relationship. An indicator of unresolved conflicts is kitchen sinking. That is where one of the partner piles all the dirty dishes, bringing up all the complaints and transgressions of the past and the present onto the table. An accumulation of rocks. Loneliness. Feeling lonely is different to being alone. Being alone is not having anyone within your physical proximity. Feeling lonely is not being understood. So you could be laying in the same bed and still feel lonely. Feeling lonely in a committed relationship It's living in a paradox. And there's only so much dissonance one can take before wondering, why am I even in this relationship? Right fighting. This is where couples fight to be right and adamantly refuse to agree to disagree. Someone has to be right. So let me ask, do you want to be right? Or do you want to get this right? Translated differently, is being right more important than your relationship? If that is the case, then it would be very hard to be in relationship with anyone. We live in subjective reality, which essentially means we all experience the world differently. And it just depends on our perspective. No one is necessarily right or wrong. When we fight to be right, this means invalidating and denying the other person's experience and their subjective reality. It's disallowing their psychological and emotional existence. Eventually, it becomes a choice. Do I disallow my own existence to be with my partner, or do I allow myself to exist without a partner? Many eventually choose the latter. These are the 7 red flags. And whilst they are worrying signs, the good news is that they are all fixable.